Welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. This is the week of Thanksgiving, and throughout the week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we will study giving thanks. And I thought a great place to begin this week's lesson is to simply talk about what is Thanksgiving. There has been much said about the last Thursday in October, but let's talk briefly about Thanksgiving as we know it to be. It's the final or the fourth Thursday in November. And this dates back as far as 1621, when it is estimated that about 90 Native Americans and 53 Pilgrims, and we'll define that term shortly, spent 3 days in a common feast observing thanks for a successful harvest. The observation takes place on the second Monday in October in Canada. The observation of Thanksgiving takes place on the first Thursday in November in Liberia. And the observation takes place the fourth Thursday in November in Brazil, just like the US. But since those dates, many other countries participate in similar observations as the first Thanksgiving would suggest. Now, back to the first Thanksgiving, the story alleges that about 102 individuals dropped anchor in Cape Cod after missing their target destination on the mouth of the Hudson River. They were actually sailing from New England, trying to get to America for specific purposes. And we'll talk about that shortly as well. A month later, the Mayflower landed in Massachusetts Bay. The brutal winter exposed the passengers to scurvy and other contagious diseases, and also they had a major lack of food supplies. A Native American of the Abenaki tribe, along with another Native American who had been kidnapped at some point and sold into slavery, who also had escaped and returned to his native land, meaning America, taught the individuals from the Mayflower how to cultivate corn, how to get sap from the maple trees, how to catch fish, and most importantly, how to avoid poisonous plants. The Wampanoag Native Chief Massasoit participated in a 1621 event with the settlers in observation of the gathering of fruits, fowl, deer, and vegetables. Thus, we have what is considered the first Thanksgiving celebration. But the food selection like we see today is nowhere to be found, because these individuals were just thankful to be alive. Now, the settlers somehow became pilgrims. A pilgrim is defined as one who journeys to a sacred place for religious reasons. A pilgrim is literally one who has come from afar, whose specific mission is to arrive at a more sacred place. These were individuals who broke away from the Church of England, meaning the settlers in Massachusetts. the settlers at Cape Cod. They had broken away from the Church of England because it had not completed the work of Bible reformation. And these individuals committed their lives to a life based upon the Bible. But you've also got to keep in mind that these settlers were not the elite. They were not the political people. They were not the wealthy people. These were people from the lower rung. And they basically, in England, were not really readily accepted, nor were they readily recognized as being very significant. So one of the things, even before getting off the ship, one of the first things these settlers will do is come up with an agreement between all of the settlers at their new Plymouth in 1620. What you have before you is a verbatim copy of that new settlers of Plymouth agreement, better known as the Mayflower Compact. In the name of God, let it be so. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James. Remember the King James translation of the Bible? By the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, defender of the faith, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith, and the honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. Do by these present solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together in a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof do enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitution, and officers, from time to time, and shall be thought most meet or fit and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names at Cape Cod this 11th of November, in the reign of our sovereign King Lord, or Lord King James of England, France, and Ireland, the 18th, and of Scotland, the 54th, in the year of the Lord, 1620. Quite an interesting document. It's sort of a document of what you would see of a local city, a local jurisdiction, of its aldermen, of its city council. But it's interesting to also note that it said the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia. Before people could travel and come into this new country, they had to have what was called a patent. And the patent had to come from the country they come from, or from others who were in the country they were coming to. Well, needless to say, England was not going to give these individuals, who for all practical purposes were seceded or leaving England, they were not going to give them a document or a patent of passage to leave that country. So they get it from the Southerners in Virginia. And that becomes a part of this agreement. Let me share with you one tidbit of information before we close today. What was Thanksgiving in America? On November 21st, 1620, 41 adult males on board the Mayflower signed what became known as that Mayflower Compact, which served as the document to preserve order and establish rules of self-government. The objective of the compact was to create fair, equal laws that were in the best interest of the settlement and agreed to by a majority of those who were separatists. The compact was to assure the majority that strangers and others who were not separatists would not be able to influence the decision of the majority, who were all male separatists. Now, we talk about the majority rule, right? That's never what they meant. Because when we talk about majority rule, we're saying, let's say in a room of 80 people, if 70 people say yay and 10 say nay, we say, well, the majority rule. That's not what they meant. The majority were the separatists. They ran the show. And what they meant, and what they always meant, is that we will not be the minority. We will always be over and not under. We will always be the head and not the tail. So the compact was to assure the majority that others, strangers, slaves, and even women would not be able to influence the decisions of the majority. The majority were all male separatists, separatists from the government of England, the crown of England, and also the English way of practicing religion. Because their argument was, these guys aren't serious about total reformation. The Mayflower Compact became the Northeastern, North American self-government law that was basically what colonial Europeans imposed upon the lower class minority of Europeans. So in essence, what these pilgrims did, what these settlers did in the Northeast, North America, land of Native Americans, is establish the very form of basic politics and basic religion that they were separated from. Interesting Thanksgiving material. Nothing wrong with celebrating Thanksgiving. I'm going to celebrate Thanksgiving. I'm going to celebrate by resting, by giving thanks to God. But I think it's important for us to know the origin and at least an introduction to history behind certain things that we do. Doesn't make it wrong, but I think we sometimes just jump into things headlong and we don't have a clue about why we do what we do. Come back tomorrow and we'll continue talking about giving thanks. I'll see you back in class tomorrow. Don't be late. And above all, please don't skip class.